Hey, thanks so much for joining me today for our weekly devotional. Today we're going to be in Daniel chapter 5, and we meet a new king today, briefly, and we see something unique to the story of Daniel in this chapter. But again, we'll notice that this is a sort of vision report, and then Daniel is the one who gives the interpretation. And so we're not supposed to be, trying to figure out what this means and interpret it and apply it to the end times or anything like that. In this case, we're given an interpretation, and then we see a statement about how it played out in history. So let's look at what this text tells us today, and then we're gonna read through it a little, read parts of it really, and then we're gonna talk about what some of the main points here are in light of the overarching theme of the book, that God is the one in control, even if his people are not the ones in power. Okay, so let's go to the text now. It says, "Many years later, King Belshazzar gave a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he drank wine with them." So I'm going to just actually pause right there. So this is much later. So we talked about Nebuchadnezzar last time and how he had been restored as king. Now we have a new king. His name is Belshazzar, and Belshazzar is obviously later in time. And so a lot of people, a lot of scholars think that this story occurs like on the eve of the overthrow of his kingdom. So as the invading army is surrounding the city and attacking, Belshazzar is throwing a great feast, throwing a party and celebrating and enjoying the spoils of his kingdom. And so it's in that light that we start this story of this king who is prideful, is enjoying the fruits of his position as the authoritative one in the kingdom, and he takes it to the extreme. We'll see here in another verse or two. So, starting in verse 2, "While Belshazzar was drinking the wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver cups that his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He wanted to drink from them with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines." So right here, we see that he is doing, if you're a Jewish person, he's doing something that is incredibly disrespectful, right? Basically, he has taken the things that are meant to be used as worship for the Lord God. He's taken those things and he's using them as his dishes for partying. The cups and all the different things that were meant for worshiping of the Lord God, he's using them to, drink alcohol and do other things with there at his great party. And as you would imagine, that creates the tension in this story. And so as he's doing all of this, verse 5 tells us, "Suddenly they saw the fingers of a human hand writing on the plaster wall of the king's palace near the lampstand. The king himself saw the hand as it wrote, and his face turned pale with fright. His knees knocked together in fear, and his legs gave way beneath him." I love this picture because it's obviously from some sort of eyewitness who's reporting these kinds of things about. I mean, you don't make up the details about his knees knocking together and passing out unless you saw something like this happen. I love the imagery here. And so the king has fallen over. He's baffled. He doesn't know what this means, and so he's promised. He kind of sends out a decree among all his wise people. Daniel is evidently in the city. He's not nearby. He's not at this party. He didn't get invited to the party. Good reasons probably, but still, he's not there. And so nobody can interpret this. And so someone tells him, "Hey, call for Daniel. Daniel can tell you what the writing means." And so King brings in Daniel. He's like, "Hey, are you one of these exiles? Are you the one that has interpreted dreams for my predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar," and all of that? And Daniel says, "Yeah." And the king's like, "Hey, if you can do this, then, we're going to give you these rewards and you're going to be a great man and all these things. And so we get a real picture of Daniel's character in verse 17 here. Daniel answered the king, keep your gifts or give them to someone else. But I will tell you what the writing means. And I can just imagine this king, thinking he has motivated this guy immensely by the promise of this great stuff. And Daniel's just like, I really don't care about that, but I'll tell you what this means. And so he talks about how God is the one who has all power and majesty and honor, and that others have attempted to, that his predecessor, even Nebuchadnezzar, had attempted to take that place, and that it caused him to live, like a cow out in the fields and a wild animal. And he says, you're his successor, and you know what happened, and yet you have not humbled yourself. You're building yourself up in pride, even more so, it looks like, than Nebuchadnezzar did. So Daniel then turns and says, this is what that says. This is the message that was written. Mene, tekel, and parsin. This is what these words mean. Mene means numbered. God has numbered the days of your reign and has brought it to an end. Tekel means weighed. You have been weighed on the balances and have not measured up. Parsin means divided. Your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So he interpreted the dream there, he interpreted the vision, the writing that occurred on the wall. It's weird. It's a vision. They all see it, but it's not in some sort of a dreamlike state. It's actually happening there on the wall. So that's unique in this situation too. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was dressed in purple robes. A gold chain was hung around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. So evidently the king went ahead and carried out the promises that he'd made to Daniel. And that very night, Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, was killed, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. The picture that we get of Belshazzar is this arrogant person who's basically doing the most despicable thing towards the Lord God that could be imagined. And because of that, God takes the kingdom away from him. And that very night, the guy dies. And that, to me, raises a couple questions. First of all, who's in control? It's not the king, obviously. It's not Daniel. Daniel knows he's not the one in control. He's unimpressed by the promise of position and wealth and that kind of thing. But God is the one in control. And he will uphold the honor and glory due his name. And so that ought to be a warning for us in the 21st century, as well as the fact that people get what's coming to them. God is not quick to act. He's oftentimes slow. And so God's people are living in this land under a foreign power. They have no power. It's basically parallel to what they experienced in Egypt. And yet, God hasn't forgotten them. God is still on their side. They are still God's people. God is still acting in power. And God most definitely is still in control, even though it doesn't look like it. We've been through, in this book, we've been through the rule of one king who was prideful and arrogant. And God showed that king who was boss. Now we're presented with a different king. And in the one story we get about him, we see he is doing the exact same thing. And God, this time, has evidently set a boundary. Well, that was too far. You went too far. And so this king is killed, and another king takes the throne. And so God used Darius the Mede to execute judgment upon this guy Belshazzar. And so that, I think, has a couple of significant points for us in the 21st century. At this moment in September of 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week. And a lot of people are rightfully worried that Christians, that believers are not in charge in this country. And maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. I'm not here to debate that. But the point is, if we take this text in Daniel seriously, it doesn't matter which political party is in control. It doesn't matter if the ruler is faithful or not. God is the one in control, and God can execute judgment however he wishes. But that also means that sometimes it's not in the way that we wish. I mean, don't you think Daniel and his friends and the Jewish people as a whole would have preferred that when Belshazzar passed away, they could go home? But that didn't happen yet. It happened eventually, but it didn't happen in this moment. In this moment, God delivered his people by setting up another king and using that king to execute judgment on an unrighteous person. And so part of trusting God here is trusting God in the long term. Daniel is not a young man anymore. Daniel has been around, has seen now a couple of kings. He has kind of learned how this worked. He has also very much seen that God is the one in control, and that the promise of power and wealth and these things were not worth anything to Daniel. Instead, what Daniel wanted to do, as we saw here in this chapter, is proclaim the word of the Lord. He said, I will interpret the dream for you, but I don't need any of those gifts. And so he stayed true to the Lord no matter what. In good times and in bad times, Daniel stayed true to the Lord. And so that's a lesson that you and I can learn right there too. Stay true to the Lord in good times and bad times. Even when it looks like the whole world is against us. Stay true to the Lord, be faithful to him, and he will execute judgment. Notice Daniel didn't do anything here. He just interpreted the writing. He didn't act in any ways. He just was faithful to the Lord, and the Lord took care of his people. So I think that can be helpful for you and I in the world that we live in today in the 21st century. And I also think it can be helpful for anyone who's living in the world that God has created, because that is the reality. God is in control. And so I hope that that's helpful for you today. And if you want to talk more about that, I'd love to talk some more. You can contact me by email, justin@greenwood.church, or you can come find me in between one of the worship services. I'm usually at the information desk or pretty nearby, and we can talk then. I'll see you later. Y'all have a good week.